Good morning, everybody. Hope you had a good weekend. For those of you that are working, it looks like everybody else took Columbus Day off. So we've got a small group of, looks like 10 or 12 on, and good for you for working and understanding that you don't make money sitting at home. So if you've got questions, concerns, things going well, things going poorly, now would be the time to bring those up, and it'd be a great time for us to talk about those things. So if you got those things, you can either open up your line or send a chat question, and we will deal with those as we go along. What we're going to talk about today is the power of attorney, and I've got a few things to cover before we get to that point. But again, any concerns, things gone well, things gone poorly, now's the time to talk about them. Didn't know it was a holiday. Good for you, Steve. That's the kind of attitude we want. And you're from banking industry, man. You should know that this is a holiday. So we'll go ahead and get started. Oh, here we go. First thing is, celeb strategist with national radio show misled prospective clients, SEC says. San Diego financial advisor Ray Lucia, host of a nationally syndicated daily radio show, gave misleading information for several years about his buckets of money investment strategy for retirement savings, the Securities Exchange Commission alleged last week. Mr. Lucia has been on a radio show since 1991 and it was a syndicated show since 2000. So my little thing at the bottom there is, how long does it take? This guy's on the national airwaves. How long does it take for them to finally figure out that this guy is full of baloney? And so why am I showing this to you guys? Do you ever have somebody that brings up some of these doughheads that have radio shows? I'm just laughing at a comment. So have you ever had a client bring up one of these guys like Scott Brown or some of these other guys? Because the fact that you could bring this up, point out the fact that these guys can be on the Susie Orman, exactly, Rick. These guys can be on the air for years and say all sorts of things before they're finally caught and told that this is garbage. Because think about it, when they're on the radio, I mean, how much are their feet held to the fire for compliance or for follow-through or for, and we've talked about this before. Guys, giving advice, what have I told you guys about giving advice? For example, when somebody comes to a Social Security workshop or a Take Your Brain for a Jog event, and all they want to do is come in and talk about Social Security, can you just run the Social Security software for them without doing anything else? Should you do that? Should you do that? No. Why not, Rick? Right, Eric? No, why not? Because that's actually malpractice. Because what they do with Social Security depends on what? How much assets they have, how much pension they have, what their expenses are. Also, there's powers of attorney tied into Social Security. If one of them is incapacitated, can the other one make a decision for the other one without a power of attorney? So all these things are interconnected. And if you are giving advice, blanket advice, guess what that can get you into? Giving very, very bad advice. Let me give you an example of that. Some of you have heard the story. Most of you probably haven't. This is back 20 years ago. And I got a call from an attorney, and he was angry as heck. He says, "You nearly cost my client $40,000 in unnecessary taxes and blah, blah, blah." And I finally calmed him down and said, "Well, let's talk about this. I mean, if I'm doing this, I want to know about it because I'll quit doing it. So let's talk about this. Who are we talking about? What's the client anyways?" And so he says the client name, and I'm like, "Well, I've never heard of them. I've never heard of that person." And he said, "Well, you said blah, blah, blah." So I talked to my assistant, and they went back and looked, and sure enough, like 3 months before, this person had been to an event but had never set an appointment. And at those events at that time, I was talking about TOD and POD and putting those on accounts. So what this guy had done is he'd gone home, taken that advice, right, put TODs and PODs on his accounts. So why did that almost cost him $40,000 in unnecessary taxes, guys? Why did that almost cost him? Putting TODs and PODs on his account almost cost him $40,000 in taxes. Anybody? Yes, outside of a trust. You're exactly right. He had a trust put in place, and all those accounts were in the trust name. And then he took the trust name off of it and put POD and TOD on the accounts. So because he just took advice that he heard in broadcast form, right, whether it's on the radio or some guy up there talking in front of the room, and they give advice out there in broadcast form, can they go home and do stupid things with it, like this guy did? So once the attorney understood what had happened, he apologized and said, "Oh, I'll go talk to client and tell him, he's not to make any changes unless he talks to me beforehand and blah, 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 blah. But if he hadn't talked to his attorney and he died, that would have cost him $40,000 in unnecessary taxes because everything is connected together. And all these people on radio shows that are giving all sorts of blanket advice, can that cause people harm? So why am I bringing this stuff up? So that when a client brings this stuff up, you can what? Have a reasonable conversation with them. And what are you going to have the client tell you? The giving advice like that is not helpful. It's actually dangerous. Unless they're giving advice to one single person who's called in with a single particular problem. But giving blanket advice is very, very bad. Okay? Second thing I want to show you is this. This is right out of Financial Advisor magazine in September. And it's from Morningstar, data from Morningstar. This is the average tenure for these types of mutual funds. Real estate equity, 6.8 years. Investment grade bonds, 6 years. 5.8 years, 5.5, 5.5, 3.7 years, 3.6 years, 3.4 years, 2.5 years. Guys, how long have mutual funds been around? How many years have mutual funds been around? Any idea? Yeah, 80 years, Eric. Right, 80 years. So if mutual funds have been around for 80 years, but the average tenure of these guys managing these funds is, what, 5 years? Is that really, they couldn't find anybody with more experience than that to manage these funds? But what happens? Why is the tenure in these funds so low? Because if a guy screws up, guess what they do? How quickly do they fire him? I mean, it's like a carousel of managers in and out of these funds. So if you were going to get operated on for heart surgery, do you want the guy that's been doing it for 15 or 20 years or a guy that's been doing it for 3 or 4 or 5 years? Which one would you rather have? And guys, mutual funds are not a brand new industry. They've been around for 80 years. So really they can't find anybody with more experience than 3, 4, 5, 6 years? I know who I want operating. I mean, it sure wouldn't be somebody who's just been doing it for 4 or 5 years. I want somebody who's been doing it for 15 or 20 years. Somebody who's seen because here's the point, guys. In 5 years, can you see everything the market can throw at you? Can you see what a terror attack can do to the market? Can you see what interest rates of 12, 13, 14% can do to a market? Can you see even what a Republican versus a Democrat can do to a market? Or a Democrat versus a Republican, or a Democratic Congress can do versus a Republican. I mean, all of those things. Can you really see? Have they seen everything that can possibly happen? No. So do you really want an advisor who hasn't seen everything? I mean, if you're flying in a plane, do you want somebody with 5 years experience or somebody who's been 15 years? Somebody who's seen every type of thing. Has flown in good weather, bad weather, cold weather, hot weather, storms, no storms, flown into all sorts of different airports, or short runways and long runways? Or do you want somebody who's just been doing it for 5 years, basically seeing the same thing for every single year for the last 5 years? So do you get how you can use this with the disclosure proposal when we get to manager tenure? So what's the likelihood you're going to be able to, based on these numbers, what's the likelihood you can actually leverage this in the disclosure meeting? High or low? High or low, guys? High, exactly. Exactly, Jeff. So because here's the thing, if the manager tenure is 15 or 20 years, you really don't have any leverage there, but here's an idea that you're going to have lots of opportunities with that particular part of the disclosure meeting. So any questions on manager tenure or how you use that? Okay. So we're going to talk about the disclosure meeting and the power of attorney portion of it. And the power of attorney portion of it is part of the non-financial. The non-financial, again, we want to talk about for 40 minutes at least. And here's what we're going to do with the power of attorney. Are we going to actually come right out and slam their guy with the power of attorney? No. We're going to kind of come in the back door, because this will be our first little shot over the bow at their current advisor. And so we don't want to go directly to them. We want to back into that so that they don't have a knee-jerk reaction of trying to defend them. So that's what we're going to be trying to do with this power of attorney. So the first thing, as remember, the formula for everything in the disclosure meeting is, first of all, have them sell you on how great something is. So here's the point. The first part of the power of attorney is I'm going to have them tell me how great a power of attorney is. And does that matter whether they have a power of attorney right now or they don't have a power of attorney right now? Would that matter when it comes to the fact of having them tell me how great powers of attorney is? Or are we going to approach that the exact same way? Nope, it doesn't matter exactly, guys. So we're going to approach it the exact same way. So all we're going to do is say, hey, next thing you want to talk about was your financial attorney. You have a power of attorney, and that's good. Or you could also say you don't have a power of attorney. Let's talk about why that's important. Either way, it doesn't matter whether they have one or don't have one. You're going to go through this. Now, and again, we've talked about this many times before, but does everybody on the call understand that all powers of attorney, 100% of powers of attorney have situations where they will not be effective? Allowing people to get money when they need it most. So all powers of attorney have situations where people will not be able to get money when they need it most. And we're not. This isn't a call that we can go over that. But if you have questions on that, you can call Jeff or myself and we'll walk you through that. But all powers of attorney have situations where they will not be able to get money when they need it most. Now, let me ask you a question. I've heard some tapes here lately where this was done wrong. Should you tell them exactly what's wrong with their power of attorney? Should you tell them that it hasn't been re-endorsed or notarized in the last 2 years, and that's bad? Should you tell them that at this meeting? No, right, guys. Why not? What can happen if you tell them that? What kind of leverage do you have if you tell them that? Do you have any leverage? None, exactly. So you tell them they have a problem, but you do not tell them what the problem is. But of course, as advisors, guess what we love to do? Show how smart we are, so we keep blabbing. Instead of just telling them they have a problem, then we proceed to tell them what the problem is. Do not do that. So you'll see in the script that all we're going to do is let them know they have a problem and the consequences of the problem. That's all we're going to do. You're right, Bill. They're going to talk to their guy or they'll get it fixed. We don't want them to do that. So we're going to get them to tell us why they should have a power of attorney. Again, this doesn't matter whether they have one or do not have one. We're going to have them tell us why people want powers of attorney. And then we're going to pat them on the back and say, yeah, that's right. Yeah, things would be taken care of even if something would happen to either one of you where you were incapacitated. And then we're going to say, are we talking about making sure the trash continues to be taken out or things like that? And we get them, no, about paying bills. So we want them to talk about money. The powers of attorney are put in place mostly for money. It does other things too, but mostly for money. So now we're going to get into a consequence. We have to have them tell us, because if all we say is power of attorney is important, they say, yeah, power of attorney is important, what does that get us? If they just admit that powers of attorney are important, does that get us anything? It gets us nothing. Because if they just think, oh, yeah, I should probably get one of those. Oh, yeah, I think everything's okay. We have to have them tell us the consequences in great detail of what can happen emotionally if somebody needs a power of attorney. So we're going to walk them through a story. Now, here's a little hint that we tell people. If I'm going to talk about something bad happening, do I say, hey, so if you're walking across the street and you're hit by a bus, what will happen to you? Do I use first party or first person if I'm talking about bad things happening? No, exactly right, guys. No. I use third party. So you see, or myself. I'll say, so let's say I am crossing the street because something bad's happened. Because if you talk about something bad happening to them, they start saying, well, I would never do that. Or I would, they start to have all sorts of weird conversations when you put them in a bad situation, even if it's imaginary. So if it's bad, even if it's imaginary, we put ourselves in that position or some third party in that position. So I say, so let's say I'm crossing the street. So this whole story is about me, but I want them to realize the consequences of what can happen if somebody doesn't have a power of attorney. So I'll say, let's say I'm crossing the street, and I'm hit by the proverbial bus. Now, 3 things could happen to me. What's the first thing that could happen to me? Well, I could be lucky enough to just bounce off. I've seen, we've all seen videos of this guy bouncing off a bus, getting back up and walking away. That's great. Do I need any documentation if that's happening? No. Now, the other thing is I could be killed. What kind of documentation do I need if I'm killed? And they'd say, well, you need a will or a trust. Exactly, a will or a trust. But let's say that don't walk away and I'm not killed, but instead I've incapacitated. So I'm sent to the hospital, and my wife walks in, And there I am with tubes and wires and machines all hooked up to me. I'm not responding. What kind of document do I need then? A power of attorney. Exactly, I need a power of attorney. And what's my wife thinking when she walks in there? Well, she'd probably be worried about you. Yeah, she would be. I mean, I'd hope she'd be worried about me. You know, because there I am with all these wires and tubes and everything else. And what kind of things she's worried about? Well, whether you're going to get better and you know, whether you're going to live and, you know, are you going to be, have problems. Yeah, all of those things, right? So she's worried about me health-wise. But let's say this starts to go on a little bit longer. Then what does she start to worry? I mean, does life stop? Just because I'm hit by a bus, does life stop? Well, no, it doesn't stop. And what do I mean by life not stopping? Well, I'm talking about, well, don't even bother, Missy, because this is way different than that script. Okay. So I'm not following on the script, guys, because I'm going to the deluxe script. And the reason you don't see the deluxe script on the site is because this is about 3 pages of script that I'm doing here. You get the outline online with the script, because I want, if you just read the script, how emotional do you think it's going to get them, guys? Do you think it's going to get them emotional if you just read the script, or if you walk them through the story? And I want them to be really, in a gut level, realizing the emotions that can happen here. So does the world stop if I'm incapacitated? No. So what keeps happening? She keeps getting mail, right? And guess what's going to be in that mail? Well, bills, right. And now that I'm in the hospital, what extra kind of bills might she be getting? Well, medical bills. Yeah, medical bills. So those are big bills or small bills? Big bills. So now she's worried about me health-wise. Is that stressful? Yeah, well, that's worries. And what else is she now worried about? Well, the money. Yeah. And is that stressful? Well, that's stressful. And why would that be stressful? Yeah, well, she needs to pay the bills. If she doesn't pay the bills, I mean, she could then I might turn off the. And I said, well, yeah. And think about this. Where is most people's money? Is it in the checking account? No. Well, where is it? Well, it's in their retirement accounts. So if most of my money, or our money, my wife's money, my money is in my IRA, can she get access to that money? Whose name is on that account? Well, mine. Now, her name's on it too, as what? Well, as the beneficiary. Which means I have to what in order for her to get that money? Well, you'll have to die. Right, so she could kill me if she wants the money. Right? But if I'm still alive, can she get that money? Well, if she has a power of attorney, she can. Well, yeah, if she has a power of attorney. And if the power of attorney, what? Works. So what can happen, though, if my power of attorney, she had my power, just think about this, what if she had my power of attorney and it wasn't working appropriately, and she couldn't get money out of that IRA, how would she feel? Would she be angry? Yeah, she'd be angry, and she'd also be what? Well, she'd be stressed, and you're going to work all the way through this. You want them to live this movie. You want them to see this movie in their head of what can happen. Not just that a power of attorney is a good idea. That does nothing. They have to live through this scene of me and my wife not having the power of attorney, and everything that bad can happen. And who are you talking to here, guys? When I'm going through the story, who are you talking to? Who are you talking to? The spouse, exactly, the spouse. The wife, that's who you're talking to. Because you need to get her on your side. If you get her on your side, she is almost invariably the decision maker. Even though the man, and I'm talking generalities here, the man might be taking care of the money. If the man takes care of the money, then the wife takes care of the family, and she wants to make sure this stuff is taken care of. She doesn't want to be sitting there without so she's getting this. She's internalizing it. So you get where the script that's on the site, the written script, is an outline of what you should be doing. You want this story to be as technicolor as possible or as bland and outline-ish as possible, guys. How should this story come across? In technicolor or in outline form? I want you guys to understand this, so let's see some answers here. Disney, exactly. Colorful, exactly. The more colorful you can make it, the more emotional you can make it, the more it's going to affect that spouse, and the more she's going to get on your side. Okay? So now they're going to understand that, you know what? She understands that they need that power of attorney. So she said that why it's so great. And then I'm going to go into, once we've established that powers of attorney are great, then what we're going to do is go into a conversation about, well, advisors here are here to worry about your return, right? Because isn't that how most people view us? Our only job is to what? Get them a good return. So we have to acknowledge that. But we then are going to take another step and say, what? Is our job only return, or what else is our job? Because this whole next conversation is about this. What else is our job besides just getting them a high return? Getting the money when they need it most. Exactly. Access. Exactly right, you guys. So the next part is we go through this little story. So let's say I went to somebody and they gave me $10,000 and I turned it into $100,000. How would that be? Oh, that'd be pretty darn good. Yeah. Yeah, it would be good, wouldn't it? It would be good. But let's say that they gave me $10,000 and I turned it into just $50,000. How would that be? Well, it'd be good. It wouldn't be quite as good, but it'd be good. Right. So it may not be as good, but it's still okay, right? And because that's my job to do what? When somebody gives me money, what's my job as an advisor? Well, to grow it for them. Exactly. It's to grow it for them. Now, let me ask you a question. If you had a difference between, or a choice between the $100,000 or the $50,000, which would you choose? Well, I'd choose the $100,000. And I'd say, well, why? And again, you see how I'm going to expand further than the script here in real life. I'm going to say, well, and why? Why would $100,000 you choose $100,000? Well, because it was a higher rate of return. Exactly, it has a higher rate of return. I mean, you're smart. But now let's say there's a catch to this. Well, what's the catch? Well, let's say with the $100,000, I turn the $10,000 to $100,000, but the $100,000, you can get the money anytime you don't need it. So when things are going great, you can get access to it. When the market's going up, you can get access to it. When you have no need or no car, none of the kids need it, you can get access to it anytime you want when things are going great. But if things go to heck in a handbasket, if you actually really, really need that money, well, then you can't have access to it. What do you think about that? Well, that's not very good. Yeah, but let's say the $50,000, you can get access to that anytime you want. When the market goes up, market goes down, you are in hard times or no hard times, you don't need a car, do you need a car? You can get that money anytime you need it, the $50,000. What do you think about that? Well, that's what I would want. So let's go back and I'll say, which one would you rather have? With that caveat, with the $100,000, where you can't get the money when you need it most, or the $50,000 you can get it anytime you want, now which account would you want? Well, I'd rather have the $50,000. Well, I'm confused. Why would you want the $50,000? Just 2 minutes ago, you told me you want the $100,000 account. Why would that be? Well, because, I mean, it's not, if I can't have access to it, it's not worth anything. And they're going to tell you whatever they're going to tell you. Say, yeah. Because, I mean, if I gave you a 100% rate of return, but you could never get that money, what's that worth? Well, it's worth nothing. Why? Why? Because they let them and make them really explain that not getting their money is horrible. And you're just going to answer, yeah. So the fact is, the $100,000 is more, but if I can't get access to it, then it's no good. I agree. Because growing your money is important, isn't it? Growing your money is important, but what's just as important, if not more important? Well, being able to get at it. So what are we doing there, guys? We're having them say how many times at what? Yeah, return is important, but getting access to the money is as important, if not more important. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to have them talk about why access is even more important during bad times and why that's the power of attorney are so important. So, again, getting money during good times, any place can do that, right? But the time you want your money most is what? When things are going well or things are going poorly and you're struggling a bit? Well, when things are going poorly. Yeah. And advisors that don't review powers of attorney are bad. That's what we're going to point and we're going to go next. So yeah, that's exactly. That's why I be straight with you. That's why I spend so much time talking about the powers of attorney. Because what kind of advisor would I be if when my clients came to me and they really, really needed that money and I said, well, I'm sorry, I can't give you your money. What kind of advisor would I be? Well, not a good one. Yeah, not a good one at all, right? So you see, that's why I spent so much time making sure my clients' powers of attorney are in good working order, because I never want to be in that place where when my client comes to me and I say, well, it's not my fault you can't get the money. You just don't have your power of attorney done properly. I mean, would that really placate you? If I said, well, it's not my fault, your power of attorney's not done right, what would you say to me? And they'll say, well, you should have told us that a long time ago, or blah, 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 right? See, yeah, I agree with you. Because, see, my clients expect that I can help them grow their money, but they also expect that if they ever needed their money, what? Well, that we can get it, exactly. The power of attorney is the document that really is the key to being able to get your money. especially during the, what kind of times? Good times? No, the bad. Exactly. And I won't even take on a client without a proper working power of attorney. What would your view of me be if you ever came to me and you needed money and I couldn't give it to you just because the power of attorney wasn't right? What would your view of me be? That it wasn't my fault, or that it was my fault? What exactly? Because again, what would happen if my clients could not get their money when they needed it most? Well, you'd probably get in trouble. Exactly. Now we've gone through this. We've determined why powers of attorney are so important. We've now determined that what? Getting a good return on money is important, but having access to it, especially bad times, is even more important. And that any advisor who doesn't look at this stuff would be what kind of advisor? A bad advisor. Now, have we mentioned their advisor yet? No. Are we going to mention their advisor? No. We're going to let them what? Connect the dots. But I'm trying to make those dots as close together so connecting them is not too difficult. Do you get what I'm saying there? Trying to put those dots as close together as possible so they can connect those dots without actually mentioning their guy. Because this is my first volley, my first true volley at their guy. Do I want to bring him up? No. Do not bring the guy up at this point. Let them connect the dots. Because we want them to graduate. Because when they walked into our office, how did they think about their guy? When they walked into our office that day, how did they think about their guy? That their guy was good or bad? Good. So this is, you're right, Jay, good. So what we're trying to do is back into this, so without attacking their guy, we're going to have to get them conditioned to the fact that, well, maybe my guy is not quite as good as I thought. And then they're going to say, well, maybe my guy's making mistakes. Well, maybe my guy is purposely making mistakes. Well, maybe my guy is screwing me. Do you see how we go through this gradual situation rather than saying, going right for your guy screwing them? Instead we say, well, maybe my guy is not quite as good as he was. Boy, I'm a little disappointed in my guy. Well, maybe my guy's missing things he should be getting. I'm getting a little irritated with my guy. Maybe my guy's doing this stuff on purpose. I'm getting angry at my guy. Do you see how that can happen rather than just jumping in and saying, you should be angry at your guy? See, we're backing into this. Do you all get that, guys? Do you all get that? So now that they know that, hey, powers of attorney are important because there's major consequences to the spouse if this isn't done properly, they won't be able to get the money when they need it most, that access is as important as rate of return, and that you're a bad advisor if you're not taking a look at these things. Now that we've got all those things agreed upon, now I can tell them that I have concerns with the power of attorney. What if I told them I have concerns with the power of attorney at the beginning of all this? What would happen? What would happen if I said, I have a concern, here, let me explain, blah, 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 blah. Why do we wait until they've agreed on all these points before we say that's what concerns me? Leverage, exactly, Jay, leverage. They'll defend their guy, but see, right now, it's all over. Because when I was doing all those things, did I ever give them an opportunity to defend their guy yet? No. Or tell me, powers of attorney aren't that important. No. Or that, hey, my guy's just responsible for access to the money, or for return, not to access the money. No, I've actually had them tell me all those things up front. So when I finally get to the point where I say, well, that's what concerns me because yours ain't working that way, they've already told me all those things that they could possibly use to defend their guy have been removed from them because they've already told me out loud that those were appropriate, reasonable things to think about. So I'm going to say, well, I agree. And I guess that's what concerns me because in a brief preliminary review, I haven't had time, again, to go through your power of attorney with a fine-tooth comb, but glancing through it quickly, there's already a couple of things that I found. Of course, I'm going to want to make sure I look at the thing thoroughly before I make recommendations, but I've already found a couple of things that would prevent you from getting money when you need it most. And then I say, now, so we're going to want to address that when you come on board. Now, the next thing we want to talk about, and I move on to the next thing. So what have I done there, guys? What is this all about? Where I say, I haven't had time to go through the power of attorney, the fine-tooth comb, but glancing through it quickly, and again, I'm going to want to look through this thing backwards and forwards before I make any formal recommendations, but just glancing through it once, I've already found a couple of things that would prevent you from getting access to money when you need it most. So we're going to want to address that. I'm going to put a little note here to make sure we address that as we move forward. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, so what am I doing there, guys? What's this whole count? Avoiding questions, Rick. You're right. Well, how am I avoiding questions, Rick? How am I avoiding questions? Well, moving on, I would agree with that. I'm moving on, but what have I planted in here? When you come on board, yep, I've done all that. But look what I've said. I haven't had time to go through your power of attorney with a fine-tooth comb, but glancing at it quickly, Now, of course, I'm going to want to go through it thoroughly before I make any formal recommendations, but just glancing quickly through, I've already found a couple of things that I can see to prevent you from getting. What am I saying there? Hey, I've just looked through it very quickly, and I've already found a couple of things that are wrong, but I'm not going to make any recommendations until I have time to do what? Go through it more thoroughly. So if they say, well, can you tell us what that is? What is it? Where do you see? What can I tell them then? I've already planted what I can tell them. What can I tell them? Well, again, folks, I've just looked through a very cursory way, so I haven't had a chance to look at all of the things. So I'm not going to make any recommendations until I can make sure we fix all the things rather than just try to haphazardly fix one thing or another thing. I want to make sure we do it thoroughly and in a very methodical manner so we make sure we get all of those things fixed, again, when you come on board. Okay? So that's how you do a power of attorney. So this is a short one today, but do you have any questions on any of the stuff we talked about? Will the general power of attorney work with an annuity, or would you need it? Jeff, you bring up a very good point. Will the general power of attorney work with an annuity, or would we need a specific power of attorney for the carrier that would be used? Yes and no. It depends on the carrier. I mean, that's why there's a gazillion things that can be wrong with a power of attorney. I've had one guy who's with his own father here in the last couple of weeks called me and said, this thing happened with my own father. And I'm a financial advisor, and we just did the power of attorney 2 years ago. We went to the insurance company. My brother went to the insurance company with the power of attorney, actually went to the insurance company because they had to withdraw some money to pay for his father's long-term care. And when he went there, they said everything's in order, everything's fine. And then 2 days later, he gets a phone call, and guess what the phone call is about? Oh, the power of attorney isn't going to work for us. Think about this, guys. Think about power of attorney. Why would a company not honor a power of attorney? First of all, if the company doesn't honor the power of attorney, what do you have to do? Well, the family has to go to court to prove that the power of attorney is still valid. And then if they find out it's still valid, how is the bank or the insurance company or the brokerage company punished if that's the case? How are they punished? If they refuse to honor power of attorney and the family goes to court and finally gets the court to say this is a valid power of attorney, honor it, you're right, Fred. There's no punishment whatsoever. All they do is say honor it and move forward. Now, why don't companies want to honor these power of attorneys? I think there's real reasons and there's fake reasons. The real reason is if they honor the power of attorney, what happens? Do people use power of attorneys to deposit money? Do people use the powers of attorney to deposit money? What do people use powers of attorney to do? Everybody's saying liability. You know what? I think that's the fake reason. I think the real reason is they don't want to take part with any of that money, so they use that as an excuse to delay that as long as possible. And you're right. The reason they give is liability. Well, we don't know if this is a valid power of attorney. It was only done 2 years ago. Well, what the hell they want us to do? I've even seen them refuse powers of attorney that were done 60 days, guys. They weren't notarized within 60 days. So the fact is that whether it's because they want to hold on to the money or because of liability, the fact is powers of attorney can cause people all sorts of heartache, can't they? Now, as 5Q members, guess what? Eric said he's seen it in 14 days. Holy cow. Withdraw. Many banks require their own POVs. Yep. They've all got all these different things, and they need you as their quarterback. They need you as the person who will fight for them to get these things fixed. Because do you think their current advisors even looked at their power of attorney? I guarantee you they haven't. So they need you as the quarterback that knows that if you see anything where they might need to use the power of attorney, that you can quickly fix things for them. Make sure they have all the banks' power of attorney. Again, there is no perfect power of attorney, but they need an advisor who is aware of these things, who will help them navigate through all of these hoops and turntables and turnstiles and all this crap that all these different institutions are throwing at people nowadays to not honor these powers of attorney. They need you, and their advisor is not looking at these things. And you have to make sure they understand the problem with their advisors not looking at these things. So, did we ever bring up their advisor? Nope. But for most people, will they start to thinking, my guy didn't cover this. My guy didn't spend time on this. I wonder why my guy didn't make sure these things were happening. He never asked me for my power of attorney. He never brought this. Do they start to think those things in the way we presented it? Most people. Yes, they do. They start to, well, Rick says no. Then Rick, you need to go back and do it even more carefully to make sure that they do think that. And remember, that's where I start to say what? What kind of advisor? Oh, sorry, misunderstood, Rick. Okay, good. So you guys do get it, that I haven't mentioned their guy, and I was actually having it point at me. What kind of advisor would I be if I didn't do things? And I have them tell me that I would be a horrible advisor or a crappy advisor who's likely to be sued. And then they start to think, wait a minute, my guy didn't do that. My guy should be doing that. He never looked at. Do you get what we're doing there? We haven't brought up their guy, but we're having them start to doubt how great their guy is. We haven't called their guy a bad guy yet, but we've planted the seed of doubt in them. And that's what you have to do. You have to plant the seed of doubt so they start to think, hey, well, I guess my guy's not quite as good as I thought he was, so that as we move through the rest of the details, we disclose the rest of the things, it's easier for them to voice in their own words that my guy is doing things that disappoint me, my guy is doing things that irritate me, and finally, my guy is doing things that piss me off. But this is where we start to do it. You see that? So any questions on that, guys? That's all I have to cover today. So any questions on power of attorney or any other questions we can talk about? So we got a question here. So general theme through the agreement meeting is to not to ever mention his name, raise all issues. No, we do eventually bring up. We don't ever mention his name. You're absolutely right. But we always say, so why do you think this was missed? So we're going to get. This is where we don't bring up him at all. But eventually, like with the beneficiary, we say, now who helped you fill out this beneficiary form? Why do you think this was missed? He did get some things right here, didn't he? He got his name right, and why did he get his name right? And then he got his the amount right, and why did he get the amount right? So why do you think he missed this? Does he get paid on this? So we do bring him up later on, but we don't bring him up. We always let the client bring him up. Who helped you fill out this beneficiary form? They bring him up. We don't accuse him. So when your guy did this, why didn't he do this? Why didn't he fill out this paperwork? Why didn't he do it? We don't do that. We're always backing in and letting them make all the accusations. But this first time, we don't even mention him at all. But as we go through, no, we start to bring him, allow the client to bring up him, and then have them assign the blame. And this would continue throughout the entire disclosure meeting. Yes, it would. I got a question. Would this continue throughout the... Yes. So the power of attorney is where we finally start to really have them think about... Because with the other non-financial stuff, up to this point, we're having them think, that's a good idea. I really need that thing. That's a good idea. I really need that thing. They're not necessarily thinking that, oh, my guy should have given me the disclosure form. They might think that you're a good guy for doing it, but they're not thinking their guy's a bad guy for not giving them their survivor's guide. But now the power of attorney, we're starting to have them think, well, my guy's not quite as good as I thought he was. And then as we go on from every point forward from the power of attorney is now moving towards their guy is not doing what he's supposed to be doing, either because he doesn't know, doesn't care, or he's doing it on purpose. So the power of attorney is where we actually start to leverage all of that. Any other questions? Allow the client make the connection and assign blame, which is more powerful than someone else assigning blame. If we do it, they may start defending their guy, not what we want. Exactly right, Eric. That's exactly right. And they may start, even when we do it the appropriate way, if we slip up and we sound too accusatory, they may start to get defensive, and that's why we go to our most important skill, which is what, guys? That's why we have to be excellent at the most important skill. And what is that skill, guys? Getting on their side. We're having them go through this whole process in an hour and a half of going from this idea that they think their guy is great to this guy, the idea that this guy is screwing them. Do you think there may be some times in there where they might get a little defensive? Yes. And that's why we need to be excellent at not only getting on their side, but recognizing, hearing, seeing when they're getting a little antsy and a little defensive. We immediately, even if it's a little bit, we want to jump on their side to make sure it doesn't accelerate to the point where they feel they need to defend their guy out loud. Because generally they won't start. If you do this right, they're not going to start out by defending the guy. They're going to start out by saying things, well, that might have happened, or that probably happened. I'm not sure why he did that. See, these are not defending their guy, but they're being defensive. And at that point, we need to get on their side. Whether they say, well, I don't know if he intended to do that. You say, yeah, we don't know if he intended to do that. I mean, he's not here to harm you. He's here to help you. And so you're going to get on our side before you finally twirl around and say, but point is, was it missed? Well, what word did I use there, guys? Horrible word. What word did I use there that was horrible? But. You're right, Steve. But. I use but. Never use that word. Fred says, are you going to rework the script? No! Guys, why am I not going to rework the script? How many pages will this script be if I rework it to do it the way that I do it right here? The script is an outline. Use the points to know what you're supposed to have them say. If I redid the script, guess how many pages the script would be if I do it the way that I normally do it? Guys, the power of attorney is already like 7, 8 pages. Guess how long? War and Peace, Rick, you're exactly right. It's why we have these coaching calls. It's why I don't put all this stuff in the script. Because if I put everything the way that I'd like you to do it in the script, you'd be looking at War and Peace if you looked at the whole disclosure meeting. That's why we have these coaching meetings, so you understand what the point is. And guys, remember, am I the only one talking here, guys? Am I the only one talking here? No. So that means, as is the client, if I put the whole script here, is the client ever going to say what we want them to say? That I say is going to say in the script? No. So you just have to understand, for example, well, the point of the story is what? The point of the story is I need them to understand at a visceral level, at a gut level, at an emotional level, that not having a power of attorney can really cause a spouse all sorts of angst, stress, problems, consequences. I don't care how you get there, that's where you have to go. And it's going to be a little bit longer than the script is. Or what about, well, I mean, do you get it, guys? That all of this is the script is an outline, so you can get, but the reason I put the points in there so you understand, oh, this is the point I want to get to. And does it really matter whether, as long as you get that point across, the points that I put in the script, and all of the scripts on the site have been redone with the points in them. So if that's the question you were asking, all the points are now in the script, so you can see at least here's the point we're trying to make here. So when you go back to the script, you'll see these points made. And does it really matter even if you use any of the words that I use as long as the point is made, guys? No, it doesn't matter. You can use whatever words you want, or whatever stories you want, whatever examples you want, as long as the point is made. So I've got a question here. So the basic theme or point is each item is a leverage builder. Exactly, Jay. Each point is a leverage builder, and that's why he's given an example. Why the power of attorney is important. That you're taking it away. Managing, getting on their side, and the excruciating detail. I'm not sure. Yeah. So all we're doing with every single part of all of these scripts is trying to make points. It's not a script that I want you to memorize. So I've given you an example, an outline of how to get there. Your job is to breathe life into it, to make it Technicolor, to make it a Disney film, and to use the words that you would use, to use the examples that you would use, to use the phrases that you would use. If you find some keywords and tricky phrases that you like that I'm put in there, that's fine. But don't try to memorize my script. The only script I want you to memorize, word for word, is at the agreement meeting in the setting the tone. That's the only script that should be memorized word for word. The rest of the quote-unquote scripts, you just should understand what we're trying to accomplish with that script. Be familiar with it and use it as the bones of the conversation you're going to have, but not as a script of the conversation you're going to have. Does that make sense, or am I talking Greek there, guys? Use it as the bones of what you're talking about, but not the actual word for word. Super. Any other questions or comments before I let you guys go? Since it's a holiday? Oh, everybody seems cool. Okay, well, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for taking the time to be on the call, and I appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks.